Baby Audio are becoming one of my favourite new developers because they continually keep making unique products at affordable prices. And this latest addition to their lineup of already really cool plugins is an analog delay called Comeback Kid, and this one is well worth checking out. Comeback Kid by Baby Audio is their third plugin release, and this was sent to me on the release date, but I've been holding fire on doing a review on it because I wanted to really spend some time with it and get to know it. And for me, this has become my favourite delay plugin simply because of its ease of use and its sound sculpting potential. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the different controls and what they do. Using the track you just heard, which I've created, we're going to loop the piano part and I'll explain things as I go along. Let's start by increasing the wet signal and listening to the default preset. By default, the plugin starts in straight mode, and we can use the time dial to change between the different subdivisions for the delay. We can also switch between dotted, triplets, and also we can use free mode to take full control of the delay timing. This plugin in particular goes down to 0.01 milliseconds all the way up to 2500 milliseconds. So it's a highly accurate delay and gives us lots of flexibility if we want to get creative. We can also turn the delay off by moving the dial all the way down or double clicking the Comeback Kid picture in the middle. This allows us to completely bypass the delay and use Comeback Kid as an audio processing tool, so we can take advantage of the shape tools and the flavor tools and the stereo tools to process our audio tracks. In the center, we have the ping pong switch. When this is enabled, it'll make the delays bounce between the left and right speakers instead of both playing in stereo. Moving on to the shaper section, we have controls for the low cut and high cut filters, so we can shape the sounds of the delay in terms of darkness and brightness. But where the real shaping happens is here with the attack and sustain dials, and this is essentially a transient designer for the delays, which is extremely handy to have inside of the plugin, because usually, like with most delays, when you're working with them and you want to sort of work on the actual sound of the delays, you're having to chuck in loads of different plugins on the insert chain to try and massage things out of them. Whereas with Comeback Kid, it's all built in, which is extremely useful straight off the bat. So we can make the delays pop more, give them more attack, or we can soften them. We can lengthen them, and we can also shorten them with the sustains. That in itself, having those two tools is really handy. It really is handy, and it's one of the good selling points of this delay. Moving over to the right-hand side here, we have the flavor section, and we have 4 different controls we can work with. Tape allows us to add some tape saturation to the delays. Swirl adds phasing to the delays, so it makes them more swirly sounding. Really nice subtle sound. And then Source adds a little bit of reverb onto things. So really useful being able to add reverb to the tails of the delays. And you'll also notice there's a switch called Cheap, and when you enable this, it runs things through an 11-bit circuit to just dirty them up a little bit more. down to the bottom left here, we have the stereo control section. So wider allows you to make things sound wider by making variations in time between the left and right speakers. So richer works in a similar fashion. It creates variations in pitch between the left and right speakers. And this one, I love cranking this one, it sounds great. Pan allows us to pan in the stereo field where we want the delays to be. By default, they're in stereo, so they're going to play out of both speakers, and it's panned in the center, so it's going to be equal. And we can use the panner to move it to the left or the right, which again is incredibly useful because, for example, if you're working on guitars, just from the plugin, you can put it on one of the guitar tracks without having to set up an effects sender or anything. And you can, use the free mode to dial in a very low amount, a millisecond delay. So you can offset it in one of the speakers to make the guitar sound fatter. And you can just do it from within the plugin, which is really, really useful. Over here, we have a switch for turning the delays into mono. So by default, again, the stereo, when we hit the switch, it makes them mono. And we can still pan the mono signal between the left and right speakers as well, which is extremely useful yet again. Moving over to the final section, the bottom left section here, we have 4 different controls. Now I'm going to start with Ducker. This is one of the main reasons why you should check out this plugin and buy it, because it saves you so much time when working with delays. Usually on a song, you would use volume automation on a track to dip the delays level when someone's singing. If you've got like a delay on the vocal, you dip the level of the delay so it's not clashing with the vocals, and then when they stop singing, the delay comes back up and fills out the space between, and this is known as ducking. So I'm going to give you a good example of this. I'm going to turn up the source signal here, so we're not just listening to delays, we're listening to the dry signal and the wet signal. And I'm going to increase the ducker so you can see what it's doing there. It's probably not the best example for me to do it on the piano track. It might be better off actually doing this on the vocal parts here. So let's just load up Comeback Kid. Oh, I've already got it on there. And loop this vocal here. Solo it. And we're just going to put in a little basic setting here, right? Okay. So you can hear straight away when I'm playing it without Ducker enabled, it's just playing the delays. Which is not very desirable, right? However, I can turn down that wet signal and then start increasing the Ducker. I don't wanna do it no more. I don't wanna do it no more. So it's dipping the level of the delay below the vocal volume, which is fantastic. I don't wanna do it no more. I don't wanna do it no more. I don't wanna do it no more. I don't wanna. Trust me, that in itself is such a time saver, and there's only one other delay plugin I can think of that have added ducking in after it's been released. Whereas these guys have done it straight off the bat, and all delay plugins should have a ducking feature on them as standard. So what are my final thoughts on Comeback Kid? Well, for me, for $49, this is an absolute no-brainer of a delay plugin. You've got loads of creative potential with it in terms of sculpting the sound, but also some really useful features that you don't find in other delays. And although we didn't dive too deep down the rabbit hole in terms of the different sounds and presets, ideally I want to encourage you guys to head over to the website to download the free demo of it so you can try it out for yourself and explore the sounds of Combat Kit, because you can get lost in doing this kind of stuff with delays. Now, the only downside to this plugin I've been able to find, other than the bugs that have already been fixed, is that the GUI is not scalable. So if you're on a 4K monitor, it might appear on the smaller side of things. However, I'm using a 2K ultra wide, and for me it looks perfectly fine and usable. So I think that concludes everything. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the video, and thank you for spending time watching it. And thank you to the guys at Baby Audio for sending me over this plugin for a review. For me, it's a double thumbs up. I'll leave the links in the description box below. Be sure you go check them out, and hopefully you'll enjoy the product enough to make a purchase.